In this presentation, we're going to go through the mechanics of advancement at a very high level for Cub Scout, Boy Scouts, and venturing. So we'll start with Cub Scouts. Cub Scouts in advancement, they work with the idea of doing their best. They don't have to do the requirements as written, as long as they can do their best to get close to what is as written. The other thing that's that's unusual about Cub Scouts is they have to do the Bobcat rank first, no matter where they enter into Cub Scouting. So if they enter into Cub Scouting at the Wolf level, they still do the Bobcat rank first. The Bobcat rank is an orientation type of rank. It tells them about what Cub Scouting is. So they get that orientation done whenever they come in. It doesn't matter what level that they come in on. The other thing about Cub Scouts is that it's progressive, but wherever you come in, let's say they come in as a Tiger Cub, they do not go back and earn Lion rank stuff, or they come in as a Wolf Cub, they don't go back and earn Tiger stuff. So they stay at the level that they are in, and when they advance to that level, let's say either by birthday or by school grade, then they stay at that level and they work that level's requirements, and they cannot work any requirements on a previous level. So they can't go back to Tiger. If they're a Wolf Scout, they can't go back to Tiger and finish up Tiger requirements. Once they're a Wolf Scout, then they have to work Wolf requirements. And that's determined by age, if you're in an LDS unit, and if you're in a non-LDS unit, it's determined by school grade. Now let's go into the Boy Scout side. There's more involved in the Boy Scout advancement, because in the Boy Scout advancement, we require the boys to do what is written as written, no more, no less. And so as we talk about Boy Scout advancement, we really need to understand that nobody can add to requirements. No Scoutmaster, no council advancement person, nobody can add to advancement. So whatever is there, and that's what the boy needs to do. But he can't do less than what's there. So people have a lot of questions surrounding that. Most of our questions that we get will have to do with Boy Scout advancement. So let's talk a little bit more about Boy Scout advancement. Now there are certain concepts in Boy Scout advancement that are talked about, and there are a lot of questions surrounding them. So we'll go into those in a little bit more detail here. So the first concept is reasonable expectation. Well, what is reasonable expectation? Well, the term reasonable and within reasons is supposed to help suggest to a unit that has some general rules by which the Scouts are to operate. If a Scout is able to achieve these, then all is well. If not, there must be some accommodation for youth that don't fit in, that don't have rules given to them by the troop. In that case, we have to make a judgment call. Well, is what the Scout did reasonable? Is it within reasonable expectations if you didn't give him what to do? And that's the guidance that we have at a district and a council level that we have to look at when we look at, was this requirement done? And you'll see it being applied to certain things as we go on. So if a Scout is able to achieve what the troop asked them to do, then all is fine. If not, there must be some accommodation for youth to which the leader and the boy have agreed. And such issues might relate to other activities that a boy is involved in that may occasionally interfere with Scout activities. So let's go into this a little more. In one area that this comes up is in active participation. So in active participation, what does that mean? Well, what does the word active mean? Well, in the BSA definition, active means three things. One, he's registered with the Boy Scouts of America. 2, he's in good standing with the unit and with the council and with the BSA. He has not been dismissed for any reason. And 3, the scout meets the unit's reasonable expectations, and if not, a lesser level of activity is explained. Now we'll go into that in more detail. So let's look at an example. Johnny Scout is a Star Scout. He's an assistant senior patrol leader in a troop. He's a sophomore in high school. He's in the Order of the Arrow as a lodge officer. He's a high school football team starter, and he's a youth group leader in his church. At his board of review for life, Johnny indicates he has not been able to attend all troop outings, and should the board consider him active, is the question. Well, the answer is of course, because the boy is active, and he's an active participant in many community activities, and clearly is achieving the mission and the vision of the BSA, which the mission of the BSA is to build good character in young people. That's the mission. So is that happening? Sure. Is he involved in activities that would build that? Sure. So in this case, we would consider him active, even though he is not attending the troop outings. In every rank, there is a requirement called Scout Spirit. It's how the Scout lives the oath and law in their daily life. Members who live these ideals daily have Scout Spirit. And Scout Spirit is measured by how the Scout lives, not only in the troop, but also in at home, at church, at school, everywhere. And if he's demonstrating Scout Spirit, then he passes, and he gets signed off by the Scoutmaster. The Scoutmaster makes this call. If he isn't, then he isn't. He's not signed off. And this is determined by how he lives the oath and law. It is not determined by the number of meetings he attends, whether or not he pays dues on time, whether he's delinquent in dues, any of that. It's based on, is he living the oath and law in his daily life. Now, service projects are something that the Scouts throughout their rank activities are required to do. They have to participate on service projects for almost every rank now. And those then should be part of the troop program. The troop should have a regular service project part of their program. And when they're creating these service projects, keep in mind that some of the requirements require it to be a conservation service project. So keep that in mind when establishing service projects for the troop. Another thing on service projects is if they participate in an Eagle project, it does count for that requirement that they have to participate in a service project. Now let's talk about positions of responsibility. Now remember, I said that for to be considered active in the troop, they could be doing sports, they could be doing, they could be in band, be a section leader, and that would count for being active in the troop. But it does not count for a position of responsibility. For a position of responsibility, the Scout has to be in one of the positions listed in the requirement. And as long as he's in that position and the Scout is doing what the troop asked them to do for that position, then they get credit for the time spent in that position. If the Scout does not do what the troop asked them to do, or does absolutely nothing, then the scoutmaster should be asking the scout to do the work, and eventually, if the scout continues to refuse to do the work, to replace him with someone else. And the hours the scout has already spent, if he spent any hours doing anything, it counts. If he has, or any time doing anything, it counts. If he didn't spend any time, he did absolutely nothing, then no hours, no days count. Now, there are, in certain instances, a unit leader can assign a leadership project for Star and Life Scouts instead of one of the positions of responsibility. And as long they should make sure that the unit leader makes sure that that's a good project to do, for that scout to do instead of the position of responsibility. Now, if the unit does not give an assigned list of duties to the scout as to what to do, then we look at, well, were reasonable expectations met? I mean, the scout didn't know what to do. He kind of went on his own to figure it out. And did he do it to the best that the scout could do based on what the scout knew? And such reasonable expectations basically comes into play again. And this is for the positions of responsibility. Now, if you're looking for descriptions for jobs, and they are in the Scout handbooks, there are some suggested job descriptions for these positions of responsibility. As a district and council member, we look to see, and a board of review member, we look to see, well, if he wasn't given direction, was reasonable expectations met? And these slides basically go through all of that, and this one here says, remove the scout from the position of responsibility, but time already served, if you actually did serve some time, that counts. Scouts that disagree and say, well, I think I did it fine, they can still go to the board of review, and the board of review makes the determination, well, did he do it or not? From time to time, we get questions asking, well, can a single activity be used for multiple requirements? And basically, the answer is yes, as long as certain parameters are satisfied. One, that the two requirements match exactly, and the basic intent exists for both requirements. Both of those have to be met. They really are the same requirement. Also, that the requirements don't say specifically you cannot use this for anything but cooking merit badge. Beware of requirements that seem to look the same, but when you read them, they're actually different. There are a few out there that citizenship in the community and communications merit badge have a requirement that sounds like it's the same when you just skim it, but if you actually read the requirement, they're different. So beware of that when you're trying to we call this double dipping, when you try to double dip. Now let's go to venturing for a minute. Venturing has their own awards. If you're, you can work on Boy Scout awards, but you can also work on venturing awards, and they have their own venturing awards. And the emphasis in their awards are adventure, leadership, personal growth, and service. They call that ALPS, like the mountain. And all of their awards fit into one of those categories, and they have their own requirements. that they have to fulfill, and then they have their ultimate award is called a Summit Award. Their awards break down into Venturing, Discovery, then Pathfinder, then Summit. And then Summit has a service project that is similar to the Eagle Service Project, and they work towards those awards. They have their own boards of review. We'll talk about them briefly when we talk about boards of review. And there are time extensions that are allowed for the Summit Awards, similar to Eagle, for if something comes up that's beyond the Scouts' capability, or the Scout couldn't avoid it and it happened beyond their control, they might be able to apply for an extension. This concludes the overview of ranks for the different programs, and the more detail on the overview of the ranks and the methods of scouting and rank advancement for these different programs can be found in Chapter 4 of the Guide to Advancement. Again, to get to the Guide to Advancement, you can get to it from the national page by going to scouting.org/guide to advancement, and you just look for Chapter 4 and you'll find more on the methods of advancement for these programs.